Okay, let's unpack this. For anyone who has ever, stared up at the night sky and wondered if there was a secret ring housed inside a mountain somewhere, we are officially in a moment of convergence.
We really are.
We are diving deep into the history, the sprawling lore, and the improbable longevity of the Stargate franchise.
And the timing couldn't be more perfect, making this deep dive, well, essential prep for you, the learner. We're talking about a franchise that successfully lived 3 distinct lives on television.
And now we're seeing the signal for a 4th.
Very clear signal, yeah.
That signal is twofold. First, we've seen the massive announcement that all 10 seasons of the flagship show, Stargate SG-1,
all 214 episodes.
Over 200 episodes, exactly, are returning to Netflix in January 2026. I mean, that alone speaks to the ongoing commercial value of this IP.
That's huge.
But that renewal of access coincides perfectly with the official news from Amazon, who, after purchasing MGM in 2022, now owns the entire intellectual property, that a brand new series revival is in development for Prime Video.
So this isn't just a historical retrospective. Our mission today is to trace the Stargate journey from a single, successful 1994 film into one of the, I think, unlikeliest success stories in sci-fi TV history.
Right. We need to analyze the specific narrative architecture that allowed a military sci-fi show to run for decades, blending, military action, deep archaeology, and world mythology.
And that's the key. The context here is understanding the show's DNA. It managed to sustain itself because the core concept is both high concept and immediately accessible.
I mean, at its heart, the Stargate is an ancient, ring-shaped alien device that creates an instantaneous wormhole between planets.
Simple enough.
And for Earth, this gateway to the stars is controlled by a top-secret U.S. military installation. Stargate Command, or the SGC, a fortress buried deep within the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado.
And that balance, the fantastic possibility of intergalactic travel anchored by the gritty reality of a military base, that's what we need to define.
We'll explore the complex web of lore, from the parasitic Goa'uld to the Ascended Ancients, and really appreciate how the franchise adapted while keeping its core team dynamic so incredibly intact.
So where else to begin but the film that launched 1,000 wormholes?
Let's start there. 1994's Stargate, directed by Roland Emmerich and written by Dean Devlin.
The initial cinematic effort was a genuine success story right out of the gate.
It really was.
It was produced on a $55 million budget, which was pretty significant for its time, and it grossed nearly $200 million worldwide. For Emmerich, this was his first major blockbuster hit.
It put him on the map, and the premise they laid down was solid enough to support the next, 2 decades of storytelling?
Easily. The story starts, fundamentally, with the discovery of the Stargate itself. It was unearthed in Giza, Egypt, way back in 1928 by Professor Paul Langford.
But it wasn't until 1994 that the U.S. military could figure out how to actually activate it. And to do that, they brought together 2 key, very opposing personalities played by genuine Hollywood stars.
You had Colonel Jack O'Neill, played by Kurt Russell. And Russell's O'Neill was highly disciplined, rigid, and just profoundly damaged by the loss of his son, a very heavy, stoic military commander.
A man on a suicide mission, essentially.
That's how he was presented. He was tasked with leading the mission.
And the person who unlocked the potential of the device was Dr. Daniel Jackson, played by James Spader.
Perfect casting.
Oh, perfect. Jackson was the brilliant but socially awkward Egyptologist. His great breakthrough was realizing that the 7 symbols needed to dial the Stargate weren't just decorative.
No, they were spatial coordinates corresponding to star constellations. That's what allowed them to calculate the exact address of a destination planet.
And that technical detail is so crucial for you, the informed listener. The original Stargate network required 7 specific chevrons to be locked into the ring.
Think of them like buttons on a cosmic telephone.
Exactly. The first 6 chevrons denote the spatial coordinates in a 3D matrix, and that final 7th chevron denotes the point of origin. In this case, Earth.
And once that 7th chevron locks,
that's when you get the kawoosh, the iconic explosion of energy as the stable wormhole forms.
An effect they kept for the entire franchise.
So Jackson's breakthrough leads to the first expedition through the wormhole to the desert world of Abydos. And it's here that the unique blend of ancient mythology and advanced sci-fi technology is immediately established.
Right away. On Abydos, they discover a civilization of humans enslaved by a powerful, malevolent alien being named Ra, played with this striking androgynous presence by Jay Davidson.
And Ra is revealed to be a snake-like, parasitic alien part of a larger species known as the Goa'uld System Lords.
Right, and they prolong their lives by possessing human bodies and, critically, posing as Earth's various deities. In this case, the Egyptian sun god.
So the Goa'uld threat isn't just biological, it's a threat to our identity, to our history. It shows that the gods we worshipped were, in fact, these technologically advanced parasites.
And the lore establishes that Ra used the Stargate thousands of years ago to transport human slaves from Earth to Abydos to mine this strange mineral used in his technology.
Naquata.
Naquata, exactly.
Yeah.
The only reason Earth was spared was that the humans back on Earth revolted, overthrew Ra's overseers, and buried the Stargate, forgetting its existence until 1928.
The initial mission, which ends with O'Neill destroying Ra with a nuclear device, was actually intended by Devlin and Emmerich to be the first chapter of a much larger global cinematic trilogy.
They wanted to explore other mythologies, right?
Yeah.
Like Norse or Greek.
Exactly. But that film trilogy never materialized.
Because the rights were sold to MGM in 1997,
Yeah.
who then pivoted the franchise toward television, which in hindsight was probably for the best.
Absolutely. Now, it's fascinating how the franchise continuously leverages its own history, even years later. Before we pivot to television, we should probably note how the earliest lore was expanded by the 2018 web series Stargate Origins.
Oh, SGO, yeah. That really cemented the film's foundation. It's set in 1939, so decades before the SGC even existed.
And it focuses on a young Catherine Langford, the daughter of the original discoverer, Professor Paul Langford.
Right. And the narrative centers on Catherine having to go through the gate, when the military barely understood it at all, to rescue her father after he's captured by Nazi cultists.
Led by Wilhelm Bruch, who intends to use the gate for their own ends, of course.
Of course. And this provided two crucial elements for you, the informed fan. First, it detailed the early struggles to understand the device and the initial very tentative gate trips that predate O'Neill's mission.
And second, and I think more importantly, it tied the character of Catherine Langford, who became this recurring crucial link to the past in SG-1, directly into the earliest days of the Stargate's discovery. It showed Earth was fighting these threats long before they had a starship fleet.
Which brings us to the television era.
The longevity machine. So MGM takes the rights, and Brad Wright and Jonathan Glassner successfully negotiate the transition from film to TV, launching Stargate SG-1 as a direct sequel series. It picks up 1 year after the Abydos mission.
And this show became a phenomenon. I mean, 10 seasons, 214 episodes. That's a tenure that very few contemporary sci-fi shows could ever match.
The transition was everything. They kept the foundational premise. The SGC in Cheyenne Mountain is Earth's base for exploration, but they needed to redefine the characters to suit a weekly television format.
Which is where the crucial calculated tone shift happens.
Exactly. Kurt Russell's O'Neill was a heavy, serious character. Richard Dean Anderson stepping into the role of Colonel Jack O'Neill, now with 2 L's, a change he insisted on to differentiate his character.
I love that detail.
He negotiated a fundamental shift. He pushed away from the strict, humorless military officer archetype, and he injected the snark, the pop culture references, and the lightheartedness that became instantly iconic.
That one choice was absolutely foundational to SG-1's decade of success. The show became military science fiction, yes, but it was tempered with action comedy and a lot of heart.
Anderson was known on set for insisting on less dialogue, wasn't he?
Oh, famously. He would just cut lines out of the script that he felt O'Neill wouldn't say, or he'd replace them with a dry quip. That commitment to brevity and humor defined the character and the whole show's personality.
So then they had to find replacements for Spader and the other core roles. They chose Michael Shanks for Daniel Jackson, who perfectly balanced the role.
He really did. He wasn't just the nerd or the translator anymore. He evolved into the team's emotional center, their moral compass.
He was the voice who constantly reminded the military brass that the people they encountered across the galaxy were often victims, not enemies.
And the new additions just cemented the SG-1 team structure. We have Amanda Tapping as Captain Samantha Carter. She was the brilliant astrophysicist, the technological heart of the team.
So often the one saving the day with a clever piece of ancient science or some engineering hack.
And the sources mentioned that Tapping brought a conscious warmth and depth to the character, often pushing back against the initial writing choices.
There's that one famous anecdote that perfectly illustrates this, about a line from the original pilot, "Children of the Gods."
The infamous line, exactly. Tapping was highly critical of a line where her character asserted her toughness by saying, "My reproductive organs are on the inside," which is a big advantage when it comes to hand-to-hand combat.
That's a terrible line.
It's so clumsy.
Yeah.
She found it completely unreflective of how intelligent women speak, and it was widely mocked, even within the writing room.
And Brad Wright, to his credit, was so dissatisfied with it that when he released the final cut version of the pilot years later, he excised it completely.
Which just shows how the writers responded to criticism and how Carter evolved into this unequivocally brilliant, respected scientist and officer.
And completing that original quartet was Christopher Judge as Teal'c, the quiet, massive Jaffa alien.
Teal'c's defects from the service of the System Lord Apophis in the very first episode. He joins Earth to fight for the freedom of his entire enslaved race.
He becomes the stoic, philosophical warrior, often delivering these deep truths with minimal dialogue. Indeed.
Indeed. And of course, the steady anchor for the entire SGC operation was Don S. Davis as General George Hammond.
What a great character.
A fantastic character. And Davis, himself, a decorated Vietnam veteran, actively worked with the writers to ensure Hammond was a more complex, well-rounded, and better representation of military general than the stereotypical hard-ass they'd initially conceived.
Hammond wasn't just barking orders. He was a surrogate father to the team and the human face of homeworld security.
That focus on character chemistry and camaraderie, combined with a close partnership with the U.S. Air Force, that was the winning formula that sustained the show for a decade.
Okay, so let's talk about that massive expansion of lore that came with all that longevity.
Right. The Gold provided the primary dramatic engine for the first 8 seasons. They were the snake-like parasites, the ultimate villains driving the story. But the writers were really smart about structuring the threat.
How so?
Well, instead of one single threat, they used the concept of the Gold System Lords. That hierarchical structure allowed the show to constantly swap antagonists.
So you had Apophis as the military threat, Sokar as the devil figure, you as the surprisingly rational one.
Precisely. They could do that without ever having to destroy the core enemy premise. This ensured the stakes were always fresh, but remained intensely personal.
That narrative structure sustained the first half of the show's run, but then it got even more ambitious. The Gold were eventually replaced by far greater threats, introduced as the team uncovered the legacy of the ancients.
And this is where the lore becomes truly dense, in the best way.
Yeah. The ancients are revealed to be highly evolved, human-like beings who originally built the entire Stargate network across the Milky Way and Pegasus galaxies millions of years ago.
And they eventually achieved a state called ascension, where they moved beyond their physical bodies and onto a higher plane of existence.
Their technology and their history become central to absolutely everything. The discovery of their Antarctic outpost, for instance, led directly to the creation of the starship Prometheus.
And crucially, to the search for Atlantis.
Right. The writers systematically integrated these high-concept elements, showing that every technological advantage SG-1 gained was essentially salvaged from the wreckage of this long-dead, vastly superior civilization.
And then, after dealing with the Gold, the final 2 seasons, seasons 9 and 10, introduced the ultimate ideological threat, the Ori.
The Ori are perhaps the most compelling antagonist, because they were a faction of ascended ancients residing in another galaxy.
And unlike the non-interfering ascended beings in our galaxy, the Ori were zealots. They sought power through forced worship in a faith called Origin.
So they sent their human followers, called priors, through this supergate network to convert or conquer the Milky Way.
It created this immediate visceral conflict. You have the Milky Way ancients who ascended but refused to interfere versus the Ori who ascended and became tyrannical gods.
And the energy derived from this compulsory worship, the faith of Origin, actually powered the Ori's tremendous abilities. It was a massive ideological and existential threat.
It was. That Ori arc was so vast, it couldn't be resolved within the series finale. It ultimately needed the direct-to-DVD film Stargate, the Arc of Truth, to provide the final resolution and bring that conflict to a close.
What's truly remarkable is how they systematically wove real-world history into this alien structure. It wasn't just Egyptian mythology with the Gold.
No, they incorporated Norse mythology with the Asgard, our little gray alien allies who protected the treaty that protected planets.
They even pulled in Arthurian legend with the team questing for Merlin and the Sangreal weapon, and it all fit neatly under the umbrella of the ancients' history. It's a masterclass in synthesis.
And that incredibly fertile lore allowed the franchise to spawn a truly interconnected network, proving its stability long before, shared cinematic universes became the common thing.
Which brings us to Stargate Atlantis.
Exactly. SGA launched in 2004 and ran for 5 seasons. concurrent with the final 3 seasons of SG-1.
Atlantis was the first live-action spin-off, a direct result of the discovery of the ancient Antarctic outpost and the subsequent discovery of a 9-chevron address.
A gate address that could span galaxies, which they found stored in the ancient database.
The core premise immediately expanded the geographical scope. An international expedition travels to a completely new location, the Pegasus Galaxy.
And their base of operations is the massive, self-sustaining city ship of Atlantis, which, in the Stargate universe, is established as the factual source of the Greek myth.
New galaxy, new enemies. Their primary antagonists in Pegasus were the Wraith.
A hive-minded species of ghouls who hibernate for centuries and drain the life force from humans rather than possessing them. Genuinely creepy villains.
And you also had the human militaristic genie, who initially posed as primitive farmers, but were in fact technologically capable antagonists.
What made the transition so seamless for the audience was the fluidity of the characters. This was a shared universe, not just a parallel one.
David Hewlett's Dr. Rodney McKay, the highly intelligent but deeply neurotic chief scientist.
I love McKay.
He was introduced as a recurring guest on SG-1 before being transplanted to SGA as a main character.
And the flow went the other way, too. As SG-1 was concluding, key figures shifted over. Samantha Carter, having been promoted to colonel, famously crossed over to command the entire Atlantis expedition for Season 4.
O'Neill, Daniel Jackson, Teelan Timur X all made guest appearances. It reinforced that everything happening in the Pegasus Galaxy was being tracked by homeworld security back on Earth.
And SGA developed its own strong team dynamics, featuring figures like Major John Shepard, a capable military leader who can instinctively pilot ancient tech.
You had Taylor Emigan, an Athosian ally who provided that crucial cultural perspective, and later, Jason Momoa's Ronan Dex.
The deeply scarred, stoic warrior who joined the team after his own world was destroyed by the Wraith. He was a great addition.
Atlantis was considered a ratings success, right? It achieved 5 strong seasons.
It did, but the story suffered the fate common to the franchise. Cancellation before a proper conclusion.
The planned direct-to-DVD film, Stargate Extinction.
Right, which was set to feature Atlantis' return to the Pegasus Galaxy to face the Wraith again. It was going to wrap up several critical, romantic, and geopolitical plot threads.
But it was ultimately shelved due to the financial instability at MGM at the time. A real shame.
And that inability to conclude narratives cleanly brings us to the final completed live-action series, Stargate Universe, or SGU, which premiered in 2009.
This show represents the franchise's most conscious and deliberate stylistic pivot.
Oh, for sure. Brad Wright and Robert C. Cooper conceived SGU specifically to be a radical departure. It moved away from the accessible, Planet of the Week format and the action-adventure tone of its predecessors.
It was marketed as dark and edgy, intensely serialized and heavily character-driven. They were aiming to capture the market that had embraced the darker tone of the Battlestar Galactica revival.
And the concept itself really necessitated that change in focus. The plot centered on an unprepared team of soldiers and scientists who accidentally dialed the previously unknown 9-chevron address.
And those 9 chevrons were used to dial the Destiny, an ancient automated exploration spaceship launched millions of years prior to sow stargates across new galaxies.
So the team is stranded on this massive, ancient ship, constantly moving out of control, unable to return home. The central conflict was internal. Personality clashes, moral decay, the struggle for survival. It was a pressure cooker story.
And critically, SGU lacked a single dominant villain race like the Gold or the Wraith, didn't it?
It did. Antagonists were secondary. You had minor skirmishes with the resource-starved Lucian Alliance, occasional encounters with the alien Nakai, or battles against primitive berserker drones. The focus was truly on the sociological breakdown of the crew.
But the continuity remained firm through the command structure.
Absolutely. Richard Dean Anderson, post-SG-1, frequently guest starred as Lieutenant General O'Neill, now commanding Homeworld Security.
Colonel Carter, post-Atlantis, appeared commanding the starship George Hammond, which was a beautiful tribute to the late Don S. Davis.
A great touch. And Daniel Jackson also guest starred. The entire Stargate network was conceptually active, ensuring that even this totally distinct show was tethered to the history of the SGC.
We should probably also briefly mention the one non-canon entry,
Stargate Infinity.
The animated series that ran for 1 season in 2002-2003. This followed Major Gus Bonner and his recruits on the run after being unjustly court-martialed and pursued by the hostile Tlaloc Khan.
It's an interesting footnote, but it lacked the creative pedigree of the main series, and is generally viewed outside the established live-action continuity.
Okay, let's pivot to the cultural footprint. For a show that ran for a decade, launched 2 major spin-offs, and amassed a monumental 214 episodes, Stargate SG-1 rarely got the highbrow critical acclaim of its peers.
That's very true.
Initial critics dismissed the acting as wooden and the writing as, frankly, pedestrian.
That initial reception, especially to the pilot, Children of the Gods, was indeed tough. Many critics saw it as a derivative attempt to cash in on the successful film.
And they pointed to issues like the gratuitous nudity, which, as we noted, the creators later admitted was mandated by the original network, Showtime, for ratings.
A mandate that was quickly dropped or excised from later versions, thankfully.
So, if the critics weren't praising it, why did the audience, the Gators, keep tuning in for 10 years? Why did the show thrive, especially after its move to the Sci-Fi Channel?
Well, the secret to its mass appeal lies in its successful blend of complexity and comfort.
How do you mean?
The show offered deeply differentiated characters that the audience could quickly latch onto. You knew what you were getting: O'Neill's snark, Carter's brilliance, Jackson's moralizing, and Teal'c's stoicism.
And crucially, the show balanced its epic, serialized mythology, the rise and fall of the Gold, with accessible, engaging, standalone episodes.
That's it, exactly. You could tune in on a Friday night, see them explore a new planet of the week, enjoy the action, laugh at O'Neill's jokes, and still not be completely lost if you missed the last few episodes.
This point is magnified when you look at the sci-fi landscape of the mid-2000s. In its later years, SG-1 often aired alongside the critically lauded but tonally bleak and deeply serialized Battlestar Galactica reboot.
Which led to SG-1 being categorized as the anti-Battlestar Galactica.
And that was actually high praise for its audience, wasn't it?
It was. While Battlestar was praised for its unrelenting darkness, its political cynicism, and its moral ambiguity, SG-1 was valued for its reliable, self-aware, and comforting action-adventure tone.
It offered hope, humor, and strong camaraderie in the face of impossible odds.
It was comfort sci-fi, and that self-awareness was key. Richard Dean Anderson's character famously peppered his dialogue with references to Earth culture. He was always mentioning his favorite TV show, The Simpsons.
Which immediately grounded the often alien nature of their missions in relatable humor.
And this fostered an incredibly loyal and vocal fan base.
That dedication by the Gators has translated into some remarkable real-world footnotes, showing the depth of the franchise's cultural penetration.
It really has. We see it in the sheer longevity of conventions like GateCon, which remains the world's longest-running SG-1 fan convention and is still held annually in the Vancouver area, where the shows were primarily filmed.
And what about that storage door at the actual Cheyenne Mountain?
Oh, that's a great story. The real-life Cheyenne Mountain complex actually installed a mock Stargate command door for a storage closet, just as a nod to the fans in the show.
But perhaps the most enduring scientific nod comes from the astronomical community.
You're talking about the asteroid.
The asteroid, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
2 astronomers, David J. Folan and Roy A. Tucker, were such dedicated fans that they officially named a large near-Earth asteroid they discovered 99942 Apophis.
After the malevolent Gold System Lord who served as the arch-villain during the show's early seasons. I mean, how cool is that?
It's the ultimate validation. And that desire for realism and validation extended deeply into the production itself. The long-term, close cooperation between the SG-1 producers and the U.S. Department of the Air Force is almost unheard of in fictional television.
It's remarkable how far their commitment to realism went. The cooperation was extensive. An official Air Force liaison read every single script to ensure accuracy in military decorum, uniforms, and character backgrounds.
And they provided access to the real Cheyenne Mountain complex for stock footage, which made the SGC feel anchored in reality.
That institutional buy-in was massive. To validate the show's premise, 2 successive chiefs of staff of the Air Force generals, Michael E. Ryan and John P. Jumper, actually appeared as themselves on the show.
Which is just unprecedented for a fictional military science fiction series.
And the ultimate recognition of that collaboration. General Jumper officially recognized Richard Dean Anderson's character by making the actor an honorary brigadier general of the Air Force, matching the rank O'Neill achieved on screen.
Even Dean Devlin, the film's co-creator, who initially felt the TV show diminished his original concept, had to publicly admit that the passion and loyalty of the fan base proved that Brad Wright and Jonathan Glassner had ultimately created a really good show.
And that's a powerful testament to the legacy they built.
So we have this massive Legacy 3 live-action series, hundreds of episodes, a deeply dedicated fan base. What does the future hold, especially now that the intellectual property has changed hands?
The game fundamentally changed when Amazon acquired MGM in 2022. That acquisition immediately bundled the entire Stargate IP, all the films, series, ancillary rights under Amazon's ownership. It opened the doors for this renewed push.
And the commercial impact was immediate. The return of all 10 seasons of SG-1 to Netflix in early 2026 is an intentional move to reestablish the brand's visibility.
It creates an easy, accessible starting point for millions of potential new viewers who might have missed it the first time around.
But the truly game-changing development is the new series Revival, which will be exclusive to Prime Video. And the choice of the showrunner signals a deep respect for the franchise's continuity and lore.
They brought in Martin Gero.
This isn't a newcomer attempting a soft reboot. Gero is a longtime franchise veteran with writing credits on SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe.
So handing the reins to someone who has lived and breathed this universe for years, as the writer, executive producer, and showrunner, that is the strongest signal possible that deep continuity will be maintained.
And Gero himself has promised that the new series will not only honor the franchise's long-standing legacy, but will also guide it into its next phase.
Given the complexity of the lore we've just discussed, that promises an integration of the ancients, the Ori, and possibly brand new threats.
As for the timeline, the writers' room assembled in January 2026, and production is expected to take about 2 years from that point before we see the final product.
And it's not just television either. Even while the live-action series were dormant, the franchise continued to expand in other media, which served to keep the lore active and current.
Right, like the real-time strategy game Stargate, Timekeepers, which came out in 2024.
What's important here is that it features an original narrative that is officially set after the events of SG-1 Season 7. The story focuses on Commander Eva McCain and her team, who are deployed to assist SG-1 during the climactic Battle of Antarctica against Anubis's fleet.
That reinforces the idea that the core lore, even the specific dates and details of the SG-1 timeline, remains fertile ground.
The commitment to maintaining the integrity of the universe, particularly with Gero steering the ship, is what has the Gators buzzing with renewed excitement. The new era is built firmly upon the old.
Okay, so looking back at the entire journey, what's the fundamental takeaway for you, the learner?
The Stargate franchise succeeded by constantly adapting to changing television environments, from network television to cable, from action-adventure to dark serialization. But it never once abandoned its core formula.
And that formula was brilliant. Take a blockbuster premise, a gate leading to a single Egyptian-themed planet, and rapidly evolve it into an intergalactic epic spanning 2 galaxies.
All anchored by those 4 essential, humorous, and relatable characters: O'Neill, Carter, Jackson, and Teals.
It provided a necessary balance in the sci-fi genre, didn't it?
It really did. It allowed viewers who wanted complex, world-spanning depth to engage with the ancients and the Ori, while offering the comforting, hopeful action-adventure tone that the anti-Battlestar Galactica designation embraced. Its longevity is a testament to the power of blending mythology, military structure, and character heart.
And as the new revival approaches, we look at the legacy Gero promised to honor, and we realize the depth of unsolved mysteries left in the lore.
Think back to the ancients. They abandoned their grand project, the Destiny, millions of years ago, choosing instead the path of ascension and other endeavors. We know about the Lantians, the direct descendants who fought the Wraith.
But the lore frequently mentions the legendary alliance of 4 races, which included the Ancients and the Asgard.
And the Nox.
And the Nox, right. But we're talking about the great enigma of the franchise, the Furlings.
They are a race often referenced as one of the 4 most powerful races in the galaxy, yet they were never properly introduced or explored in the main shows. What was their fate? Did they ascend, or were they destroyed?
It's the biggest question mark.
Furthermore, if we look into the deep lore discussions that were developed for canceled projects like the Stargate Worlds MMO, we find fascinating potential answers to the history of failure in the Milky Way.
What kind of answers?
The lore proposed that the Alliance races tried to prepare caretaker species to survive. While the ancients fostered humanity, the Asgard, our gray alien allies, reportedly attempted a failed technological solution called Salacris.
Okay, this raises the ultimate provocative thought for you to consider. The speculation suggests that Salacris didn't just fail, it backfired spectacularly.
It didn't just cripple the Asgard race, leading to the cloning issues we saw in SG-1, but its catastrophic effects may have even been the cause of the Great Plague that ultimately killed all the unascended ancients.
Forcing the dissolution of the entire alliance.
That is the enduring question Jiro could finally answer. Will the new show finally reveal the true history of the Great Plague, the mysterious failure of the Asgard's technological solution, and the fate of the Furlings? If they dig into that foundation, it will fundamentally redefine everything we know about the origin of the Stargate network.
That gives you a fantastic framework for deep speculation. Go back and check out the 214 episodes returning in 2026 and start placing your bets on whether the new era will finally give us an answer to the greatest mystery of the lore: what happened to the Furlings?